Start with, I didn't be born in South Whitley. We grew up on the farm out there by Arnold's gravel pit, 5 miles out. And back in the early days then, hardly everybody ever went anywhere. The Depression, nobody had any money. But we considered South Whitley our town. Whenever we went to town, it was South Whitley. And Dad come to South Whitley, and the feed mill and the grocery store for what few items they needed. But actually, I have 3 families of aunts and uncles and cousins that lived on Calhoun Street and across from the old school building over there at that time. So one Sunday afternoon, sometimes after church and dinner, Dad and Mom come to town to visit them, and us kids would go over to the old schoolhouse and swing on the swings and play there. Years later, it got tore down. But I worked mostly on the farm, never went asking anybody for a job or anything because I didn't need to, but Uncle wanted me to come and help him clean horse stables on Saturday after school. Why, he'd give me $5 for the day to do that, and that was a lot of money. So, but after I got drafted into the service and I came back from the service, well, I needed a job that paid better money. So I ended up working for Fred O'Carrington lumberyard for 2 weeks, and that job was washing windows and scraping paint off of them dormitory buildings they built down Huntington. And I thought, I don't want to spend a career doing this. So I went up to Walter Penrod and I asked him about a job. And so he gave me a job at the Farmer's Elevator there. So that worked pretty good, except my job every morning was a big old straight truck, stock truck, and a scoop shovel, and I'd go to the country and scoop corn, ear corn out of the corn cribs and throw it over the top of that stock rack, and I'd get a big load by noon and come down, load it, and eat dinner, and go back and do the same thing in the afternoon. And I thought, well, I don't know. My back was hurting pretty bad the first couple weeks. So one day we was closing up at the elevator. We always closed all the doors and everything at 5 o'clock over there. There was a couple of them Metzger stock semis at the stockyards backed up there. And I'd hear them pigs a squealing, and I said, what are they doing? They said, oh, jab them with a hot shot and they'll run right up in the trucks for them. And I said, I could do that to a corn crib full of corn, it ain't gonna jump in the truck. So I went looking for a different job, and I went over and asked Mr. Metzger about a job. So yeah, he said, you live on a farm? And I said, yeah. And he said, you got a job. He said, you ever haul hogs and cattle? Yeah. He said, some of the city kids come here and wanted a job, and they didn't know which end of the pig to get a hold of to load them in the truck. So he said, well, you got a job. Well, he was very good to me, treated me like a dad, and I hauled cattle to Phoenix, Arizona, and Miami, Florida, and put them on airplanes and flew them to other countries to build dairy herds. And it was a job, but I'm gone all week long. So after that, I ended up getting married, and then I told him, I said, I'm gonna have to quit. But living in an apartment up above, which was Mike's Cafe at the time, Mortar's Corner Cafe now. And we lived up there, and he didn't want me to quit. And I said, well, I need to find a different job. And someday I want to make enough money to build a house. But I need to go home once in a while because I was gone all week long all the time. And so ended up, I did that. Then there was only one marshal in South Whitley, the town marshal. There's only one of them. He worked 12 hours at night. And then in the daytime, sometimes he's supposed to be sleeping. He'd get called anyhow. And so they, town board members come and they asked me about if I would take a job being a marshal. Well, I don't know about that. couldn't decide about it. So I thought about it, and they talked to me again. And they said, well, we have a couple problems there that needs to be taken care of. And they wanted me to take the job. They said, whatever you do, we'll back you up. He said, regardless who it is, what position they have, everybody's the same. They're all equal, and the laws are the laws, and as long as you enforce it equal to everybody, we get along fine. So they bought a brand new 1954 Chevy police car. And I was the first one to go to work January the 1st, driving it. And if you ever seen pictures of Andy Griffith, it looked just like the car Barney drives. And it was a nice car, but in the wintertime, that siren up there would fill up with wet snow and freeze up, and then it didn't work. And so I did it. Well, they told me the first couple problems I needed to straighten out for them. The post office was over there, side of where Norse's Roscoe drugstore was, on the west side of State Street. And people get off work, they go up to stop and pick up their mail, and they double parked in the street because there's no place to park, and they double parked and then they blocked the street. So that was my job to start with, to break that up so they didn't do that anymore. And then some more of them was complaining because people would work in Fort Wayne and they would carpool up there, and they'd park their cars along the main street, go to Fort Wayne all day, and their cars sat in front of the businesses, so people couldn't get to the businesses to patronize the businesses. So they made a 2-hour parking limit on State Street from the bridge down to past the fire station now there, and a half a block on each side of State Street. So, okay. Well, it didn't help me none because I lived up by the apartment, and I couldn't park there either, but that's the way the rules were. And we could park long enough to unload groceries and things and stuff, but we couldn't leave them set there all the time. And so everything was going pretty smooth. And then one day, and didn't know him, but he was the owner, co-owner of South Whitley Trucking Company, and he parked his Cadillac in front of Green Parrot, left it sit there all afternoon while he's in there. I put a ticket on his car. He's no better than nobody else. So later, he comes out, sees that ticket, and he said, oh, look, everybody, I got number 1 ticket. He goes right downtown clerk and paid it right away, but he wanted to keep it for souvenir, which that's fine, you know. And then one day, Doc Huffman parked his car over there on State Street on the west side, and there's signs there, no parking this side of the street. So I put a ticket on Doc Huffman's car. I thought, about an hour later, I get a call from his lawyer in Cumming City. Wonder what's going on. I said, well, sir, what do you mean? Well, he said, do you put a ticket on Doc's car? And I said, yeah. That's right, because it's parked where there's a sign that says no parking this side of the street. He said, well, I understand they're painting the water tower, and Doc didn't want specks of paint to get on his car. And I said, yes, they're painting the water tower, but he can either put his car in his garage or park it somewhere else. But the sign stands there, and I put a ticket on it. I never heard no more about it either. But it just gradually, everybody got along pretty good, and most everybody was happy. And I learned to know about everyone in the whole town and where they lived and where they worked. And so if somebody, a stranger, come into town looking for some of their friends, why, I could tell them, you know, where they lived or how to find them, things. And now and then, most every town has somebody that's not happy about everything. But I remembered many years ago, I went down Highway 13 toward North Manchester, and there was a big billboard sign there. welcome to North Manchester, the home of many contented citizens and a few old soreheads. I remembered that, and I thought, well, I guess every town has someone like that. And very seldom we had complaints. There was one fellow, and he would call quite often, but I could understand his thoughts because he lived back there toward the school, the other school building, and he had a big truck patch in the garden. Well, the kids that lived over in that other corner of town, they walked through his garden and truck patch to go to school. And he didn't like it because they step on a plant now and then or something. And so I agree with him, you know, we talk to the kids, hey, go out around like they should or something like that. But most of them, if they were nice to the kids would respect them and rule it. But they get nasty with them, then the kids do all the more they could to cause a problem and things like that. But I hardly ever wrote any tickets, hardly ever took anybody to jail, because most everyone you stopped, talked to them and explained it to them, and they would pay attention and wouldn't do it again, because the kids didn't have no money, so who pays the tickets? Their parents, and they're already struggling to make money to send their kids to school anyhow. And so everyone was, it's like I said one time, people didn't believe me, and I said there was 9 gas stations in South Whitley. And I said, all of them seemed to make a living and send their kids to school, but several of them told me they didn't make no money off of the gas. They did oil changes and greased the cars and put on new brakes for people and tires and tuned up cars, and the majority of them all survived like that. Even when gas was $5 for a gallon, and they got enough competition, it even got down to 8 gallons for $1 for a little bit. But about all of them survived and made it like it was. And I can remember S.D. Arnold, now his boys all helped him, and his wife, they all worked there. And he's always doing the bookwork after the station closed at night. He'd stay in there and do his bookwork till 11 or 12 o'clock. But when he left there, he'd always drive around by the bank and deposit money in the drop box. And then he would drive by the other stations to see how much they were charging for their gasoline, because he told them, he said, don't none of you start a gas war here, because I think I'll outlast all of them if you start something like that. So it just kind of didn't go on like that. But most everyone, one little girl, she come into town, and I was working up there, walking the street that evening. She's like 16 years old and new and young driver, and she had the headlight out, so I just walked out, stopped her, you know, and I said, well, the reason I stopped you, you have a headlight out. But while you're here, could I see your driver's license? And she showed me her driver's license. I looked at him. I said, you know, when you get home, ask your dad to go out to his warehouse and get a new headlight and put in your car for you, because John Anderson was her dad, and he had a big parts distribution warehouse out there, because he had an old X-Bus that he drove around all the different stations as servicing parts for him, and light bulbs and fan belts and everything like that. But years later, I was at Washington Center Alumni, and we had it up in Eagle Glen in Columbus City. And during the evening, Johnny Gillen Johnson and Lloyd Ness, they were speaking. He said, you know, when we went to school, if we got in trouble at school, we got in trouble when we got home. He says, somehow or other, by the time we got home, Dad already knew about it. And it was pretty well in order like that. So after the meeting, we went through the food line, and I'd going along getting my food, and I got down to the very end. This lady says, hi, Roscoe. She said, you don't know me, do you? And I said, no, ma'am, I don't. This is many years later. She said, I'm the one that you told me to go out and have my dad put new headlights in my car with. Got home that night, and I said, well, yeah, I remember that. But I said the law and the rules was for everybody, and I said, if my children got in trouble, got a ticket or anything happens, they stand up and take the consequences or whatever happens, because dad ain't gonna look after them the whole lifetime. And someday they face the world down the hard way if they didn't have something to stand up for themselves. So I tried to be fair with all of them and things like that. But, well, through the years, I told Ruth, a lot of people got killed at the railroad crossing right there on State Street. And several of them I knew. And there wasn't no cross arms or traffic signals or nothing there. But as I'm working at the police station, I said, see, there was two of us. One worked 12 hours a day and one worked 12 hours a night, 7 days a week. And I said, this job isn't paying enough money for me to build a house. I said, I think I'm gonna have to do something different. Well, they didn't want me to quit. I said, well, I help what I can, but I need to do something to make a little bit more money. So they hired Myron Merrick to take the day job. And so they asked me to stay on and help them. So I did. I got a job at South Whitley Trucking, which was a very good job. It was 5 nights a week I ran it, but I had every weekend to home, every holiday to home. So for the next 20 years, I worked South Whitley Trucking, but I also worked at the police station. I'd do a shift on a Saturday so that dayman could have a day off. And then the next week I'd do a shift on Sunday so the night man could have a night off. And that went on for many years like that. But ended up I was able to get enough together to build a house. And when I did that, I went to get the loan, and while I worked at Metzger's, I hauled lumber back from Alabama and Georgia to Miller & Sons Lumber Company. And that's when you cleaned that stock semi and washed it out and loaded it board by hand in there, and then unloaded it that way in Silver Lake. But I knew Mr. Miller, and so I went and talked to him if he knew somebody to make me a loan. And yeah, he said, I'll take you to find a man to make you a loan. So Mr. Miller and I, we went down to Peru, to a bank in Peru, and Mr. Miller told me on the way, he said, now you just answer the questions the best you know how, and be honest with the man. And so I listened to him. Mr. Chalkley was the man's name, and he was asking me what I did and how much I made and all this stuff. And we got done, and he wanted to know it's just gonna be a regular house, no fancy fireplaces and all those things. And I said no. And he said, well, I'll tell you what, I don't want your monthly payment to be more than 1 week's paycheck in a month, because he said 1 week for your house payment, but he says eventually you have children and then you're gonna have other expenses and things, and he said so you need money for those. And he said, I'm not interested in real estate business or taking properties back from people. If I make you a loan, I want you to have that house for you. And I thought, well, okay. Well, I was having a hard time to scrape up because the payment was $105 a month. And my pay was totaling up like $90 or $95 a week. Well, we went along with it and got it worked out. But at that time, I ended up getting to build a house and things, and when I was on the police department, they wanted us to live inside the city limits because they said, we're paying your pay, and we want you to live in the city limits. So at that time, we had to do that. And they said another thing, the city is buying the gas for the police car, so we don't want you going out all over the country with it, just keep it in town. Well, that new police car, you drive it slow all around town all the time, and it gets so fouled up that when you really wanted to go with it, it's a chugging and don't want to drive right. And one time this car went through town really fast one day, and I took off trying to catch it. Well, by the time I got the railroad track, they were way out in the country somewhere. I turned around and come back. The next day, that same car come into town, and they stopped. They said, we know we went through your town too fast yesterday, but we're with the FBI, and we was called on a bank robbery going on. And I said, oh, okay, I understand why they went so fast through town like that. But it was pretty good. Everybody seemed to work together and help each other and things. And so at South Whitley Trucking, I learned a lot of things about other stuff that I didn't know about, because we hauled out of the grip nut factory. I never saw those machines making all those kind of little nuts, the great big railroad nuts before. And they also made those brake beam arms for the railroad trains. And those things were all sticky and tar and everything when you loaded them and carried them, because wasn't hardly no forklifts and tow motors. Everything was walking and carrying in those days. But it's just like nutritional research back there. I'd have to pick up there, and they had those 55-gallon drums full of carrot oil, but they didn't have no dock or no way to load them. So we put planks down to the back of the semi to the ground, and then laid the barrel down, and 3 of us or more would roll it up the planks into the truck, and then I'd get up and stand them back up and put them up in the truck like that. And we couldn't talk Mr. Garman and Mr. Jersey, the 2 doctors that ran that, couldn't talk them into buying many things. But after Albert Jr. came home from college and got to helping back there, we kind of get to talk to him now and then to do things different. He put a little bitty roof out over that door where you're loading in the rain and getting all wet while them planks is slick and wet and things like that. And then eventually then he did get a used forklift back there to help get them things loaded like that. I didn't know, one time I had these boxes of chinchilla feed, they called it. And I said, well, I think I had 6 of them going to the zoo in St. Louis. I said, what do they do with that? And Al says, well, this carrot vitamins and everything that's in there, they feed a little bit of that to the birds and the flamingos, and it brightens their colors or their feathers. It's really nice. He said that carrot protein or whatever's in it like that. But I don't know. At the time, we went to different places, but most everything that those days, you carried it on, you carried it all. And when I first went to South Whitley Trucking, there was a man, I put a ticket on his car a few years ago, but he never said nothing about it. But I, first 6 months I was there, I thought, I don't know about this job, because I'm used to sitting in the semi and driving all day and all night, and now you're loading and unloading and jumping in and out of the trailer 30, 40 times a day or more and stuff. But in the end, I think it worked out for the best, because they kept us in real good physical shape, I have to say that. And both of my brothers are already gone, and they were younger than me, so I think that it might have had something to do with staying in shape as long as I was. But I don't know, it just, through the years, you meet lots of people, and then after I had 29 and a half years then at South Whitley Trucking when they closed the doors, and I didn't have enough time to finish a pension, so I ended up buying my own semi and hauling automobile parts to get enough time, but it was a big rat race, and just in time delivery everywhere, and when I had enough time in, and I wanted to retire, and wife went with me to Fort Wayne, talked to the lady. She said, Roscoe, you don't want to retire. This contract isn't any good. The next one will be better. And I said, you know, I drove sleepy and tired this last year and a half than I did my whole lifetime, and I've seen so many bad things happen. I think I'll just take whatever I can get and get out of there. So she said, well, that's up to you if that's what you want to do. So that's what I did, and I thought I retired. I was going to go with an Explorer van and drive some of the new vans through and deliver them. Well, in the meantime, Doris Rhodes called me from out there at Whitley Mobile. And she says, because I and her husband worked together down at Metzger's years ago, she said, would you come and help me tomorrow? Yeah, so I went out there and escorted one of the drivers down to Cincinnati and back, and I thought that's it. Then on the weekend, that man called me and he said, would you take my driver to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania Monday? I said, yeah, I guess I can. Well, he says, you need a lunchbox and a suitcase because they don't stop from daylight till dark, make as many miles as they can during the daylight hours. So I thought, well, I don't know, this isn't what I planned on for retirement, but I did that and I came back and they stopped me right away in the driveway. He said, how do you want to work? Just kind of medium or hard? And I said, well, I didn't know I had a job. Well, yeah, he said, we need you. You got a job here. So I said, well, let's say medium. I went in the office and asked Doris. I said, what does he mean? She said, well, summertime's about the only time they got a chance to make much money, because in the wintertime the days are too short and the weather's bad and such like. So I thought, well, okay, I'll try it. Well, we was running Maine and New York and New Jersey and everything like that and being gone. But there's always 4, 6, or 8 of us together at a time. So if you had a problem, everybody pitched in, helped change the tires or the wheels or whatever happened. Whereas before, when I had my semi, I'm by myself. If anything happens, it's up to me to fix it and get it going again. So I come back and I told her, I said, you know what? I'm getting to see a lot of country I never saw in my whole lifetime. And it's their equipment, and I don't have to worry about it. If it breaks down, it's up to them to fix it. And so I ended up spending another 35 years out there until last year. So ended up, well, I told her last year, I said, I suppose I might as well face it. I spent 70 years of my lifetime out on the running the big truck, so I guess I can stay home a while. So now, in the mornings, if I wake up 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock and I hear it pouring down rain, I think, oh, I don't have to go out in the rain and get all soaking wet like those fellas do, yeah? But I still miss all the guys, and I miss all the different places that we went, because I've been all over the whole United States and Canada. There was quite a while I ran Canada. And some of that I haven't missed. And my brother, 13 years younger than me, and so he was working there also. And one day I asked him, I said, where are you going tomorrow? And he told me this place in Canada, and I said, oh my, that's pretty far. I've been there before a few times. That's pretty far. Well, he was doing it, and I told my wife, I said, he's 13 years younger than me, and he's doing that stuff that I was doing, and the dispatch girl took me off of those real long trips and gave me shorter trips at last. And one day she called, she said, Roscoe, you work tomorrow? And I said, yeah. She said, now I'm going to tell you what I got for you, and if it's too far, you tell me. She says, West Virginia. I said, just right. That's fine. That's just right. They hollered at me and they said, that's too far. You shouldn't be going that far. And I said, it's just right. So I still did that. But even our son-in-law, when he got hurt and paralyzed, he was in Shepherd Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia for 6 months. And we went down quite often to see him over holidays and Christmas and spent time with him. One day, we was getting ready to leave one afternoon, and the girl said, well, you aren't going all the way home tonight. I said, no, we'll probably stop after a while and get a room. Well, I started driving a while, and then we stopped and ate, and I'm still feeling pretty good. We drove all the way home, 650 miles from that hospital, and pulled in the garage at midnight. I said, see, it's just like a day at work. We did the same thing at Whitley Mobile. Stuff like that. I said, just another day at work like that. But anymore now, we had relatives in Texas before they passed away, and we'd go down there and see them. And sometimes we drove all the way. But the last few years, I said, it ain't worth it no more. We go somewhere like that, maybe go halfway and stop for the night and stuff, but I don't know it. My experiences around South Whitley, they used to have the bandstand up there behind the gas station at the Standard Station on Saturday night. The band would play up there and entertain the farmers, and the people come to town and get their groceries. And there was a large hole in the lot there, east of it, between it and Calhoun Street, or Maple Street. And so one day, and I was looking for property to build a house, I saw Henry Oliker. He was the auctioneer, but I didn't know. He never had no signs out nowhere for nothing for sale. I asked him about property. Oh, yeah. He said, get in my car with me. He's driving all over town and showed me all these places he had for sale. And this was after Fred O'Carey's lumber company burnt down. He wanted to sell me one of them spots on that cement slab down there. I don't think so. Well, he said, water and sewer is already in there. I said, well, no, I don't think that's where I want to be. And so he showed more, and I said, Henry, how about that big hole down there past the Standard Station? No, he said, I paid taxes on that for many years. And he said, someday that old post office is going to need a new post office, and there's the spot where they're going to put that post office, and I'll sell it to them. And that's where the post office is now, in that lot that I wanted to buy from him, but he wouldn't sell it because he was saving it to sell when they needed a new post office. But he had lots of properties all over. And so then one time I talking to him, and he was selling that farm down the road where Tom's dad and them built to begin with. He said, we're starting at the north end of that field. You come this way, $400 an acre, and you can buy as many acres as you want. And I said, well, how about here where the woods is? Oh, no. He said, I can't jump around and sell this, and I'm stuck with that cornfield down there. And so I kept waiting until the properties kept selling this way, and people were buying them, but they weren't building yet, but they were buying them when they got up close enough to this end. My uncle says, let's me and you get Henry cornered and see if he'll sell us the rest of that ground. So that's what we did. We ended up, there was like 3-point-some acres left. And so we ended up buying it from him and building it. Well, then I could live there, but I needed a private telephone for the police station, because them old party lines, if we had a call and the party lines tied up, they couldn't get us. So I went to the phone office to see about a private phone, and they said, well, there's not very many available, and I don't know for sure. And they said, well, if you don't live more than 1 mile, we can go 1 mile with them. Well, we checked it out, and it's 1 mile from the phone building to where I built the house out there, so I ended up getting a private phone. But the phone building down there, I was working at South Whitley Trucking, and we had a shipment of batteries for that phone building. And just before that, we had gotten new uniforms, jackets and shirts and stuff. And another man was unloading all them batteries down there off of that truck and carrying them in that building. And I tipped one over a little bit, and the caps had shook loose on that battery in transit, and it was filled with acid, and the acid poured on the front of me. And the other man, Howard, and Mrs. Joy was the manager of the phone. He told her what happened. She ran across the street, got a box of baking soda from the grocery store, and come back and poured baking soda and water all over the front of me. And they said, you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm okay. Well, next time those clothes went in the laundry and come back, they was all full of holes. The front of the shirt and the pants had holes. They had all over it where the acid had got on them. But yeah, we just lived a pretty good life in South Whitley, really. I was happy with it, and most everybody got along real good. But
who built your house, Roscoe?
Mr. Reed, Don Reed.
Don did?
Yeah. See, he bought the old school building over here, tore it down, and he built all them houses on that street, Dr. Shepherd's office and the other ones.
Butch's, yeah.
And Dr. Shepherd was my dentist, and I was in there one day, and he said, Don Reed building your house for you? And I said, yeah. He said, you'll get upset with him before he get it done, but he said, it'll take him a while, but it'll be a good house when he gets done. He said, I think he puts a little extra material in it and more to it. Well, actually, I didn't know much about building a house, and he had knowledge about all those kind of things, and now and then I'd ask questions about it. He'd explain to me. And see, we dug out the basement mostly by hand and gravel shovels and wheelbarrows, but they dug out for the basement, and then they come and they poured all the cement walls for the basement. Then it sat there a couple weeks and nobody's doing nothing. I thought, how come they aren't working on it? So I asked him about it. Oh, he said, I don't do nothing to them walls for 30 days. He said, let that concrete cure for 30 days, he said. And then they come and they start putting the weight of the house on, building the floors, and there's a big hole all the way around the cement walls, and the guy's got planks so walking back and forth carrying everything over. And I said, well, how come they don't put dirt so they wouldn't have to do that? No, he said, I don't want nothing up against them walls till they get the whole weight of the house on top of it. And so they put the weight of the house on it, put tile around the house and pitched the walls and filled it in. Then I said, well, they're trying to pour concrete floors in the basement through them little windows around there. I said, how come they didn't do that when they did all this? No, he said, no, the way them walls got to settle and the weight of the house on it, and then we'll pour the cement. I said, well, okay, you know, I know. He says, that's the way, you know, and then let it all cure and everything. And then they come in and they plaster the walls, and then they go away again for a week or so, and things weren't going very fast. And I thought, well, he's letting that plastered walls cure good before they want to paint or anything on it. And so it took from April till about 1st of September to get in it. And after the wiring was done, and RMC inspector come to check it. He goes through the house checking all this stuff. Then he's in the basement, and then he starts in a carrying on. He said, that electrician knows better than this. Well, I didn't know. He said, I'm not trying to be mean, but he said, I'm here for your safety and your protection. He said, that's my job. He said, everything up there is 12-2 and it's all grounded except in the basement. They didn't put ground wire in those pipes in the cement wall coming. He says, I won't pass it. So Mr. Reed has to get a hold of the man, and this man's from Fort Wayne, and he come out, had to strip all that wiring out of them pipes in the basement and put all new 12-2 with the ground wire. He says, well, I don't know why they didn't pass it. This passes in Fort Wayne. Well, I don't know, but different code inspectors checking it here. And I thought, well, these are things I would know. It's all for my safety and stuff like that. But it turned out the next year, Mr. Reed come by. He said, do you care if I go down and look in the basement and look at your house? And I said, sure, that's fine. You can look. He's down there looking all around, walking around. Yep, no cracks in the wall, no cracks in the floor. And he was happy and satisfied because, and nowadays I see them putting these houses up so fast. They pour concrete, and in a couple weeks they're out here putting stuff on it and everything. And they said, oh, they put stuff in it to make it cure faster now. Well, I don't know. I don't know about some of that, but anyhow, Mr. Reed built quite a few houses around. He built all those on that street, and he used some of that old material, all the old school buildings in different houses, some of the lumber and stuff he used in them. But
I think he built Nellie and Stan's too.
pardon?
He built Nellie and Stan's too. Duggan's.
Well, I know your dad house down there in the cornfield.
Yeah.
And it was about the only house around anybody down the road, hardly anybody there. And your dad stopped one day and was talking to me about my house. He said, do you ever get water in your basement? And I said, no. He said, well, you're lower than me. I don't understand it, because he said there's been getting some water seeping in his basement.
He got brick walls.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Because he says, well, he was getting water in his basement, but no, they didn't even have to put in a sump pump or none of that kind of stuff there.
What year did you put the pool in?
Must have been 1962
I
or
was gonna
3.
say 62, 63.
62 or 3, I believe it was, because it was in for 46 years.
I don't remember not being there.
Well, lots of kids
I was
from,
born in 58.
lots of kids from town come out and learn how to swim there and things there, and Gary Kennedy put it in.
Yep.
But Mr. Mantle, I forgot the other man, they put that cement bottom in, and he told me, he said, that's an awful job. He said that, because they had to have the cement so stiff that it would stand up them walls and that all run down in there. And he said, we really worked hard to get that cement bottom in that pool. Then it had fiberglass walls around it. But yeah, Gary Kennedy put it in, because I wasn't thinking much about the idea of having a pool. And I was delivering at Kennedy Repair Shop. Mr. Kennedy said something about the pool. Gary wants to build a pool for you. And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, you know, you'll be glad you did. He says, people loads up their car, loads up their kids, and goes to the lake for the day. And then they all get tired and grouchy, and by the time you get home at night,
Makes perfect sense.
and he says, you'll enjoy it. Well, we put that pool in, and in the summertime when the kids weren't in school, that's what they wore about all day long, was bathing suits, because they go out and go swimming a while, and then they back out a while, and after a while they go swimming a while and back and forth. And a lot of their friends from school here come out and go swimming with them and things. And so in the years later, we built patios around our house and things like that. And after that pool was in there, like 46 years, it's a job to take care of it, because every Memorial Day weekend we spend scrubbing it and cleaning it and repainting the bottom, and every Labor Day weekend you spend closing it down and draining it for winter. So the whole summer is occupied, and you not got to check on it every day. Things could go wrong or happen and stuff like that. So it kind of was, but everybody enjoyed it, and for many years. And after we closed it down, the kids were all gone, and we closed it down. People said, "You miss it?" And I said, "Well, I don't miss the cleaning part and the work at it, but I said I do miss not hearing those kids laughing and playing and having a good time." Yep. Because we could come out the house anytime and you hear kids out here laughing or swimming or playing, and I said I do miss that part. But there were several pools built here in South Whitley at the same time, and most of them all went by the wayside long while ours was still in operation. And in fact, when her and I got married, she didn't know much about swimming, and I said, "And I can't swim." But with the little kids in the pool, I wanted her to learn how to swim. So Lancaster's pool was over there at the corner over there, and the Lancaster girls did swimming lessons there. And so she went over and helped with them, or learned from them to swim. That way, when I'm gone to work, I don't have to worry. Somebody that knows how to swim, and somebody's home with the little ones out there swimming things. But
Roscoe, did you have, when you were a police officer, did you ever have any encounters with Shorty Larson?
No, and somebody the other day tried to tell me that his name was Clark, and I'm sure his name was Shorty Larson. And when I first met him, I didn't know him, but he lived back there in what they call the Buffalo section. And he come out of the Green Parrot, and I was walking down the sidewalk there, and he starts talking to me. And I talked to him, I didn't know him. And he said, "Well, I'm on my way home." I said, "Where do you live?" And he said, "Well, I live back in Buffalo." He said, "I have a little house back here where I live, but then I have a couple rental houses, rental properties." And the rental properties were little, tiny little shacks, we call, that he would rent to the hobos and different people for $1 a night to live in them. But they told me, they said, he never bothers anybody. He'll go in the Green Parrot and drink, and he'll be happy, and he'll sing all the way from uptown to where he gets home. You'll hear him singing all the way down the street. But he never did bother anybody, and never really had no problem with him. But now and then somebody get unruly and stuff like that. And one night a fellow come to me and he said, "Roscoe," he said, "I've been drinking, I think too much. Would you mind taking me home?" He said, "My car's sitting over there, but I don't think I should try to drive it home." He said, "Would you take me home?" And I said, "Sure." I took him home, and I said something to the other officer. He said, "If they're nice enough to come and ask you to take them home and admit they drank too much," he said, "go ahead and take them home. Rather than they say, 'Oh, I'm okay, I'm gonna drive,' and then they hurt somebody or get themselves hurt in an accident." So I thought, well, okay, because I didn't know. Nobody had asked me before about taking them home. But people ever, one lady uptown one night, and I was walking there, and she was getting in her car, getting ready to go, turn the lights on. She only had one headlight, and I said, "Well, you don't know, you got a headlight out." And I said, while I'm here, may I see your driver's license? She gave me her driver's license, I looked. I said, oh my, these expired 3 months ago. That's when you used to have to get them renewed on your birthday month.
Mhm.
Oh, she's nervous. She said, well, should I leave it sat here and walk home? I said, no. I said, you only live a couple blocks. I said, take your car home, but first chance, I think you should get them renewed, because I believe if a state trooper stopped you out there on the highway, he'll give you a ticket. Oh, she said, I will. And people like that, you know, it was easy for them to forget to renew their license when it was. And then there was a year, I don't remember when it was, but people was all complaining they didn't have money to get new license plates renewed. They was wanting the state to give them an extension on their license plates. Well, the state did, but it's like the other officer. He says, if you watch and you notice, most everybody has their new plates on. And if you drive through the alley on Friday night behind the bars, there's the cars that's sitting there with the old plates yet, and they get paid. Instead of getting new license plates, they go in there and drink and spend their money, and then they're crying they don't have no money to get new plates. And I noticed things like that, which you didn't pay no attention before, you know. But when they started that 2-hour parking limit up there, I had to walk down the street with a stick with a spring with a bar of chalk in it, mark those tire on that car where they'd been sitting there, and then a couple hours later you go by and do it again. And most everybody was taking care of not leaving them set all the time, and it broke up the problem of people leaving them set all day while they went to Fort Wayne or something. But the Chevy garage down there, Pete Allen had the Chevy garage, and Bob Miller lived back there toward the school, 2 blocks or 3 blocks. He'd always drive his car up and park it across the street in front of the Chevy garage. And I thought, all the rest of the people didn't do that, but he's supposed to be working the mechanic in there. So he'll watch him, and 2 hours about up, he'll come out and move it up a space. And I thought, well, that's the way, but so many things had changed, because the Cordell Ice House used to sit there at the corner, the railroad Pennsylvania Street there. There's a big old wooden ice house, and they cut blocks of ice out of the lakes and gravel pits in the winter and pack them in sawdust in there. And then in the summer, few people didn't have refrigerators, they'd have an ice box, and they'd buy a block of ice, take home, put in the old ice box so they could keep their milk and things cool in there and stuff like that. But
Now, where was that at,
Is
Roscoe?
that the Harley garage? Is that
no, it's
by Dick's Links?
yeah, Norse's, where Norse office there,
Yeah,
it's set on that corner, right on the corner there.
on the Gripco parking lot?
The
Wasn't there a body shop there?
the Cordell family had that, cause
Was there also a gas station right there at one time?
well, I can't remember, the first gas station was, Bob French had Texaco on the other side.
Mexico on the tracks.
And
yeah.
then coming over here was, Harold Howard had the Flying Mobile Gas. Had big flying red horse on the front of the building, which Blackie Myers and Tommy Red bought it when they come home from World War II. And then up the street, Vance Green had the Sinclair gas pump there under the laundromat awning, by the laundromat on the side there. And then Standard was on the corner, which later went to Shell when Rich Yarnell had it at a Shell station, and then went to Marathon. But across the street where the bank is, Mike Brower had the golf station over there. And then Arnold's, and then on the other side of the bridge, Dick Swing had DX Motor Oil.
Dick Woods.
Dick Woods
Dick
had,
Woods.
Dick Woods had DX Motor Oil there.
Yeah.
But Dick Swing, he had the bulk plant back there. He bought it from Mr. Oatman.
Yep.
And then the Company's Corner out there. But And that other one, there was one where the town flagpole is there and stuff.
Little one, yeah.
There was a little one there, and I remember it had wooden ramps. And a ramp go up so they could drive a car up on there and crawl around underneath it to grease it and change oil and stuff. It wasn't like a hoist, it was just a wooden ramp they could drive one up on there. But, and Gerard, plumbing building on the other side, was there between S.D. Arnold's and, well, later on, S.D. Arnold had that building full of mufflers and exhaust pipes and stuff. Because one day I got a call when I was on duty at the police station to go to the Gerard house. Well, I went out there. Mrs. Gerard said, "I didn't call you." I said, "Well, somebody called here and said there was a problem here and they wanted me to come right away." And she said, "No, this little boy's there." She said, "Did you call the policeman?" He said, "Yes, I did. That kid over there is picking on me and fighting with me, and I told him if he didn't quit it, I was calling the cops." And he called the cops, she didn't even know nothing about it. But, yeah, it just, lots of things happened all through all those years. A lot of it was funny stuff, and sometimes it was bad things, but most of it all was taken care of and stuff. But,
What about flood? What's the worst flood you seen here?
pardon?
What's the worst flood you ever saw on the river here? When it rained?
Oh, I think the worst one that I seen was south of the bridge there a few years ago when the river overflowed and water was going across the road. And that's when Dog and Suds building was out there and got flooded there. Because her and I was trying to go out that road, and this elderly lady was up ahead, and the water was going across the road so fast that it slipped them off to the edge of the road, and their car was hanging on the edge like that. It looked pretty scary because if it had let loose, it'd have floated on down the river with them. And Nub Kreider lived in that first house and had his butcher shop back there, and that flood was really bad. He told me, he says, "This is the last time I'm cleaning this place up." He says, "When this flood is gone and that lawn is looking nice and green next summer, I'm getting this place and selling." And that's the problem. If somebody come into the community and didn't know, they didn't know this flooded like this and buy it, well, he sold it and moved up on 9th Street over there somewhere in one of them houses, I think. And so it went on for a few years and it flooded again. And recently when it flooded, it wasn't as bad, but that girl living in that house, she was all upset because traffic was going through the water on the road. It was making waves, and the waves is trying to go in the front door of her house. And I said, well, those are things you don't know about when you move into an area. Ask some questions or check things out a little bit before you decide on something like that, but people don't know, you know.
Yep.
But I don't know, there were some pretty bad accidents too, and I know we tried to keep the young people driving sensible and good and safe, but this one boy, the other policeman stopped him about his driving, so he goes home and tells Mommy, "That cop down there's picking on me." So she comes down to the police station and she asks him, she says, "My boy drives nice because I've rode with him and he drives nice." And Myron said, "Yes, when you're riding with him, he does drive nice. I've seen you ride with him and he drives nice. And when you're not riding with him, he don't drive that nice. And that's why I'm trying to help him before he gets in trouble." "Oh, well, he said, "Just forget it." She says, I won't pick on your boy no more, but if he gets in trouble and you have to go to the morgue and look at him in the casket, then that's up to you. So we stay out of an argument that way anyhow, and that's up to her, you know. But there was some pretty bad accidents. That one west of town on the way to Calmer around that railroad iron post. That boy wrapped around that railroad iron post, and my son-in-law was the first responder to get to it. He said, I knew that kid, but he said it was such a mess I didn't even recognize him. And I said, well, that kid had been hot rodding around before also, you know, and so it's sad that it has to end up that way. But I know one time I was working in town, this lady, well, him and his daughter, Mr. Shantz and one of his daughters come in, 4 o'clock in the morning. He said, a couple boys went through the campground out there and upset the tables and the camping utensils for our campers, and she said, we can't have that. She said, people won't come to camp if they do that. And she's told us who it was. Well, Harold Lewis was the deputy sheriff at the time, and he went out there, asked Mr. Underhill, he said, your boy home? Oh yeah, I think he's been home. Yeah, his vehicle sitting out there, but there was fresh tracks through the dew where it had just been there. And they checked the car and it was hot. He'd been running it. So we ended up, Larry Underhill and Rex Shipper was the two that went through the campground.
No way.
Surprise.
And Rex Shipper and the Shantz girl said, I can't believe it. Rex Shipper comes and helps my dad on the farm. Now, why would he do that? And so nobody knows where he was, couldn't find him. Well, that evening, Larry Underhill comes to my house. He said, I heard we got in trouble. I said, well, yeah. He says, you sent us home at 11 o'clock that night. We were supposed to go home, and we did, but we didn't stay there. And so, ends up, he said, what do you think we should do? And I said, Mr. Sean said he's going to have to file charges against you because he can't have that going on. But I said, I think if you go out and talk to Mr. Shantz, you might be able to settle with him. And so I guess they took care of it. Later on, Rex Shipper ends up marrying that girl. But yeah, there's just a lot of things that, like I said, I know I've been around for a long, long time, and a lot of stuff going on, things like that. But it continues, but it's much different nowadays than it was then. Because if somebody did something wrong then, policemen stop them, talk to them, take care of it. Now, it's a lot dangerous now because too many people has been on the drugs and the brains is messed up, and you stop them. You don't know if they're going to come out shooting at you or not. I know when I was out there, and I'm by myself one night, on a Saturday night, it was maybe 11 o'clock at night, evening, this lady come to me, she said, would you go get my husband and take him to jail? I said, why? She said, he's sitting there on the porch drinking and he wants me to go in the house with him and I don't want to. And so I drove up there, and the man's sitting on the porch and he gets up, and it's really hot, summertime, it's very hot. He gets up and comes down and he's standing there and talking to me, officer, how are you tonight and all this, and talking all right. And as I talked to him a little bit, he's a big man. He said, it's so hot tonight, it'd just suit me fine if the snow was up deep on the ground, 20 below zero, and they said move out with fixed bayonets, I'm ready to go. And I thought, oh, I don't know about this now. I said, nah, I said, it'll cool off tomorrow, you know. So I left. He goes back and sits on the porch and nothing going on. Well, Dale Starkey lived in the house across the street, and his family had company from Ohio that weekend. So it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, she comes to the police station, and her blouse is tore here, and she said, look, now, you see what he did? Well, now, will you go get him, take him to jail? Well, how do I know if he did that or she did that? I don't know. I didn't see it. I said, have to have a warrant. Take him to jail, I have to have a warrant. So I called Dick Gates, the prosecuting attorney. I said, Dick, I need a warrant before I can take this man to jail. He said, Roscoe, every Friday and Saturday night, I can't get any sleep because things like this. And he says, I'll get the warrant and have come and say police car to bring me halfway to South Whitley and you meet him. I said, okay. So I go meet him and I got the warrant and I go back over there to the house and I'm by myself. And he's sitting there on the porch. And I said, how you doing now? Oh, fine, fine, still hot. I said, well, the sheriff called me and he wants to talk to you about something. He said he does, and I said, yeah. He said, what do you want to talk to me about? I said, I don't really know. I just know he called and he wants to talk to you. I said, you don't need to drive. I'll take you up there. We'll go talk to him and I'll bring you back. Okay, he said, can I go get my shirt and my cigarettes first? And I said, yeah. So I'm standing there by the police car and I'm thinking, is he going to come out of the house with a bayonet or a gun or what? Well, as he came out, I could see him struggling to get his shirt on and his arm through his shirt and had his cigarettes. So he comes and gets in the car real peaceful and we start to come to the city. He said, I don't know why the sheriff wants to talk to me. I said, he didn't really tell me. I said, he wanted to talk to you. The guy's nice as can be. We drive to Columbus City and drive to the jail and Mr. Talby is there to meet us. We go in. He said, George, I'm going to have to keep you here the rest of the night. Would you empty your pockets and put them on the counter? And he emptied his things and laid them on the counter. He goes in the cell and I come back. Okay. So I made it through that scary steps like that. On Monday, I'm hauling out Essex wire plant down there, and Mr. Starkey comes to work at second shift foreman. He comes in, comes over to me, and he said, you know, Saturday night, I was like a circus across the street from us all night that evening, and that Saturday evening. And he said, she didn't have nerve enough to go get him out of jail, so she gave her sister $50 to go bail him out of jail and bring him home. And there they are sitting on the porch eating Sunday Christmas dinner, chicken dinner together, you know. And I said, well, that's just what the prosecutor's saying. That's the way it is. They get into argument and then the next day it's forgot about things like that and stuff. And I thought, well, but the majority of times, if the guys were calm and careful about it, it avoided a lot of confrontations and leads into bad situations and things. Because we had one officer here, he was all hot-headed and jumps into everything and yelling, and ended up him and another officer both got beat up because of the way he had entered the situation to begin with. And he wasn't here very long. He was causing a bad name for the rest of us. And so when he left here, he went to a villa, I believe it was. Ted might remember Bill Miner. That's where he went to a villa.
Yep.
And he was causing too much problems there, and some fellas let him off in the night, had him set up, and they shot him. And I thought, well, it's since then I've heard in the last few years there were several more stories of things that he did. This man used to live in that villa and knew him from from living in a villa, and he was telling different things that went on with him before he got shot. But, it seems like a lot of those incidents shouldn't have happened that way. It's just common sense to a situation to begin with. I know when I was doing police training, sergeant said, when you stop somebody to write a ticket, whatever you do, don't prop your foot up on their bumper or on their tire while you're writing the ticket. He said, just don't touch their car or nothing like that. And he says, a lot of times situations handled without any roughness or anything going on. And one state trooper told me one time, he said, the less talk there is going on, just write the ticket and give it back to them and let it go at that. Because the more you talk, they start getting in an argument, pretty soon they want to fight. And so, yeah, I just
You remember stopping me one time, Roscoe, when I was pretty little?
Pardon?
You remember stopping me one time?
When you stuck that car horn?
Yep.
Halloween,
About 12.
Halloween time, things are all quiet and there's a car horn starts a sticking and a blowing and it wouldn't shut off, and I looked and there's Scott walking away from it. They put a stick through the steering wheel on the car horn and make a horn blow. Yeah.
I was pretty proud of myself until you came along.
Well, yeah, sometimes you just happen to be at the place. You know, they used to put all them Christmas lights across the streets at night with all them different switches on the light poles.
Really? We didn't know that.
And 11 o'clock, they wanted us to go around and turn them all off, and I did. Then at 12 o'clock, they're all back on again. Because they followed me around and watched to see where them switches were. After I get them turned off, they're all back on. One night, which those things weren't really hurting bad, but one night I went through town and everything's fine. A little while later, I went to go through town. There's a whole row of used tires laying clear across the street in front of the mobile gas station. And I thought, oh, if a car or ambulance or something come through here, there'd be a problem there. So I picked the tires all up out of the street and rolled them back. At the time, Blackie and Tommy, they used tires, they put them in a rack back behind the gas station, but I'm not sure if Larry Underhill was involved in that or not, but somebody got them tires out and laid them across the street. And that was during
You could do the same thing with tires from Arnold's too. You could get Arnold tires and do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Any
Bill
other
Bauman-
confessions?
Bill Bauman made us pick them all up one night, and it wasn't near as much fun picking them up.
You seen them putting them out?
Any other confessions or,
What years were you, town marshal?
Pardon?
What year was you, what years?
Well, I started the first day, January of '54, and I did that a couple years. And then I wanted to leave, and so that's when they finally hired Mike Merrick. So then there's still only two, one for night shift, one for day shift. And so that's what I ended up staying the next 20 years of working weekends, so each one could have a day off or a night off. But later on, there were several more that came and went. We had one, and John Gidley, I don't know, he was a policeman, he had real nice equipment, nice new equipment, all of it. He said, Roscoe, I want you to have all my new leather and everything, cause I'm not gonna be a policeman no more. He took a job being an insurance adjuster. So we're at the police station and Phil Snodderly is there. And John starts to hand me all his new leather. And Phil Snodderly grabs it up and he said, "Oh, well, we can always use this around the police station." So he took all of it. And I thought, well, okay, it's in there, and I still got my equipment. But then I found out later, he parted all that stuff out and sold it out in pieces to different people. And I thought, well, he wasn't here very long either. But it's a kind of things that now and then happen, so you just live with it and let it go. But
All right, well, we probably need to be wrapping things up. The
Okay.
library's gonna close in about 15 minutes, so. Any other questions or
anybody else have any
stories?
questions? You got questions up there,
No.
anything?
You tell me stories every day.
You listen to them
I
every
sure
day. Yeah.
Any other confessions, Scott?
Where's the cookies?
You know,
I forgot tonight.
when Mike Harley had the restaurant uptown, he gave Bill a key for the restaurant. During the night, there's nothing open nowhere. And he told Bill, "You want to come in during the night and make you a cup of coffee is fine. Or if anybody else, just put the nickel in the cup at the end of the counter." And he left the cup at the end of the counter. People, if somebody else went in with Bill or other people, put their nickel in the cup at the end of the counter. And
You gotta do that now, in these restaurants.
yeah.
All right, well, thank you for coming, Roscoe.
Yeah, thanks, Roscoe.